Hello Year 8, thank you ever so much for completing my quiz during the lesson yesterday. It made me realise that we need to really take a bit of a step back and do lots and lots of skills practice on converting between different metric units of length. So the first thing I'd like you to do today is to try and figure out if you can remember the relationships between centimetres and millimetres and centimetres and metres and kilometres and metres. And these are all facts that we really need to know. So I'd like you to fill out those question marks for me. You can press pause and see what you remember. Okay, right, so we've got to remember that for every 1 centimetre I have 10 millimetres. And you can remember that fact because you can look at your ruler and for every 1 centimetre you have 10 little dashes. And each one of those is a millimetre. Now a metre, well, that's nearly as tall as a person. That's quite a lot of centimetres. In fact, it's 100 centimetres. And remember the word cent means 100. So that can help us remember that in 1 metre there's 100 centimetres. I've got to learn that fact. It's going to be really important in the lesson today. And remembering for kilometres, well, remember I said that the word kilo in Greek stands for 1,000. So 1 kilometre is 1,000 metres, and I find that a really good way of remembering that. Now there is one other fact that might come in useful to you, and I would like to know, in 1 metre, how many millimetres are there? And it's a fact that if you learn it, it can really help speed things up for you. I'd like you to work that out now and press pause while you do that. Okay, so if I'm thinking about millimetres, I think about what I know about millimetres and centimetres. Well, I know that in 1 centimetre, I have 10 millimetres. And if I'm thinking about 1 metre, well, I know that's the same as 100 centimetres. Well, if I know that 100 centimetres is 100 times bigger than 1 centimetre, I can find out how many millimetres are in 100 centimetres by making it 100 times as big. So I can see there must be 1,000 millimetres in 100 centimetres, which is also the same as 1 metre. So if you would like to remember that in 1 metre there are 1,000 millimetres, that would be a really great fact to remember. I'm going to rub out my working out here because I'm going to write a word that I learnt when I did French, and mille. Mille in French is also 1,000. Whoops. And so I have kilo from Greek and I have mille from French to help us. So actually a millimetre is 1,000th of a metre. That's what a millimetre means. A centimetre means 100th of a metre. So now you've got those facts all written down, I'm going to give you some questions that I'd like you to have a go at. So can you convert all of these into the correct unit that it asks for? Please press pause while you do so. Thank you. Okay, so my first one is I have 1 metre into centimetres. Well, I remember that 1 metre is 100 centimetres. So 100 is my answer, 100 centimetres. I'm going to go to my next one, which is 2 metres into centimetres. Well, if I know that 1 metre is 100 centimetres, to work out 2 metres, well, that's just going to be twice as big. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. I quite like this method because it sets it all out very clear for me. So that answer there should be 200 centimetres. For C1, it says I've got to convert 5 metres into centimetres. Well, 1 metre is 100 centimetres, so I'm writing down my key fact, and therefore 5 metres, well, that must be 5 times as big. So I think I must multiply 100 by 5, and I get 500 centimetres. Next, I've got to convert 9 metres into millimetres. Probably the easiest way of doing this is to remember that 1 metre is 1,000 millimetres. Well, that must mean that 9 metres is going to be 9 times as big. So I'm just going to multiply both sides by 9 and get 9,000 millimetres. So as long as you have your relationship written down between the units, there's no reason why you can't figure it out with a bit of thinking. On my next one, E1, I've got to convert kilometres into metres. So I really need to think about how many metres are in 1 kilometre. So I'm going to reach for my really useful fact, my key fact, and then I've got 14 kilometres. Well, that's 14 times as big. So I'm just going to multiply both sides by 14 there. And I get 14,000 metres. That's a lot of metres. I don't think I'd really want to run 14 kilometres to school every day. Okay, looking at the other side now, A2. So 1 metre, we've already said that 1 metre is 1,000 millimetres. It's a fact that you can learn. Well, 2 metres into millimetres. Well, if I know that 1 metre is 1,000 millimetres, I should know that 2 metres is going to be twice as big. It's going to be 2,000 millimetres. And I can underline that. That's nice. I'm just multiplying both sides there by 2. My next one, 7 metres into millimetres. Well, again, I know that 1 metre is 1,000 millimetres, so I'm always going back to my key fact. Even though I've written that so many times on my page, every time I write that fact out, it means that I'm creating new memories in my brain. Every time I write it out, it's going further and further into my long-term memory. It's making all those connections every time I write it down. Now 5 kilometres into metres, I just need to remember the kilometres and metres relationship. In 1 kilometre, I've got 1,000 metres. I'm just going to write that down. And so 5 kilometres is just 5 times as big. And so I'm going to do the same to the other side. 5,000 metres. Lovely. And my last one. 22 metres into centimetres. Well, I've just got to think about my relationship between metres and centimetres. Well, in 1 metre, I know there is 100 centimetres. So in 22 metres, I think I've got to make it 22 times as big. And if I do that, I've got 22 hundreds or 2,200 centimetres. Lovely. Well, I believe I got 10 out of 10. I'd like to know what score you got. Now, that was all converting larger units into smaller units. And let's now do it the other way round. So we're going to do small units into larger units this time. So I'd like you to have a go at these 10 questions, and then I'll go through them. And then you can mark your work. Okay, so press pause. Right, so my first one. Now I've got to think about millimetres and metres. Now my really useful fact is that there are 1,000 millimetres in 1 metre. Well, I have my answer in front of me. It's just 1 metre. I've got to convert millimetres into metres again for my next one. Well, I'm just going to start with my relationship. Every time I start with a relationship that I know. 1,000 millimetres is 1 metre. That must mean 2,000 millimetres is twice as big. I can see it's twice as big. It must be 2 metres. Now I'm going to start with my relationship again. I've got 1,000 millimetres is 1 metre. This time I've got 70,000 millimetres. Well, that's just 70 times as big. It's an awful lot of millimetres. I'm going to times both sides by 70. I'm going to get 70 metres. Well, that is quite big. That's about 70 of your really large footsteps. They might go from one side of the lower school playground to the other. Probably quite a few more times, actually. Right, part D. Now I've got centimetres in metres. So I'm going to think about the relationship that connects centimetres and metres. Well, I know that 100 centimetres are in 1 metre. And notice how on the left-hand side, that's where I'm writing the centimetres. It doesn't really matter. It just makes it easier for me to see what's going on. Now, if I want to get 4,000, I'm going to have to multiply 100 centimetres by something. Now, if you find that a little bit tricky, one thing that I could do to make it a bit easy for myself is figure out what 400 centimetres is. And I know that that's just 4 times as big. So I know 400 centimetres is 4 metres. And that just makes it slightly easier to see that 4,000 centimetres is just going to be 10 times as big as that. So I've taken 2 steps here. It doesn't really matter how many steps you used, 1 or 2. It doesn't matter as long as you get to the right answer. Now the last one is about metres and kilometres. So I'm just going to think about the fact that I know that 1,000 metres is 1 kilometre. Here I've got 70,000 metres. Well, I know that that's just 70 times as big. So I believe I've got 70 kilometres. And this is quite different from the method that I showed you in the lesson today. But I like this method. I think it's a little bit easier. Okay, A2. Centimetres and metres. I'm going to start with 100 centimetres is 1 metre. I therefore know 1,000 centimetres has got to be 10 times as big. So I've got 10 metres. Right, the next one is about centimetres and metres again. 100 centimetres is 1 metre. I might do 300 centimetres just to show you that's 3 metres because it's 3 times as big. And 3,000 centimetres must be 10 times bigger than that. So I've got 30 metres. Remembering that what I'm doing to one side, I'm also doing to the other. If you like this method, the arrows are just great. Next, I've got 80,000 centimetres into metres. Well, again, I know that 100 centimetres is 1 metre. I notice I've got an 8 there, so 800 centimetres is 8 metres, making it 8 times as big. 8,000 centimetres must be 10 times as big again, which is 80 metres. And then 80,000 centimetres must be 10 times as big again. 800 metres. I always get a bit intimidated by the number of zeros on a number, so I just try and make it easy for myself by doing lots of small steps, and then I get the answer right. Okay, millimetres and metres. Remember that there are 1,000 millimetres. Millimetres. You can say it in a French accent if that helps. 1,000th of a metre is 1 millimetre. So 1,000 millimetres is 1 metre. I need 3,000 millimetres. Well, that's okay. It's just 3 times as big. We don't panic. We just think about our arrows. And we've got 3 metres. And lastly, we've got millimetres and centimetres. And if I just remember that I've got 10 millimetres in every 1 centimetre, then 30 millimetres is just 3 times as big. So, there we have it. I'd really like to know how you got on. Now, for the rest of the lesson, you have got a 20-mark quiz that I've made for you, and you'll see the link in Show My Homework. I'd really like you to use this method, so it might mean taking a little bit more time, getting it right, showing you working out on your whiteboard or a scrap piece of paper, or even better, as the greatest mathematicians in the world, on the back of an envelope. Reach into that recycling bin, on the back of an old Bran Flakes packet, is where the best maths happens. Guys, I'm looking forward to seeing your results from your quizzes, and that's the last thing that I'm going to ask you to do this half term. I hope you have a really nice break next week, and I'll see you when you get back. Take care. Bye bye.